Traders Club. Welcome to the market update. Today is February 7th, 2020, Friday. As I record this video, market is closing. So I got about 9 minutes here, 8 minutes here. So you should be seeing some flashing lights on your left. Let's continue with our weekly analysis. Let's follow up from last week's analysis. Let's start with Spider, Diamond, Qs, Russell, Transport, the banks, and the semi here. So looking at the Spider, as you can see on your screen, we've been talking about this rising pivot. I tweeted out this week at 2K Kim, and 50 MA seems to be holding here. So that's the 50 MA, that blue dotted moving average, coinciding with that rising pivot here. You can see the prior resistance, right? And we initially broke out, and then we were retesting it, bounce right back up here. In the process of bouncing though, we've opened 1, 2, 3 gaps that is still open as of today, and those gaps are going to provide support should the price slide next week. So right now, the first gap area, which is this right here, so we're kind of obviously the gap is right here, right? That's where the real gap is, because in the intraday it was filled, but the partially open here, I'll show you. Let's go to hourly here, so you can see that. So you see that there's a gap, right? And that's a gap here, right? And then last week we had talked about that uptrend support, needed to break above it for confirmation. We did that. We continued higher. So you see how this is where price closed, right, at 328.93, and then it initially opened here and pulled back here. So you can see there's a gap open here, and then there's a gap open there. Let me get rid of that for now. And there's another gap here. See that? So gap here. There's a second gap, that's a third gap, right? So the breakaway gap, continuation gap, looks to be another continuation gap there. And there's RSI currently kind of in this vicinity here. So let's go back to daily there. So we initially saw that brief pop above the new all-time high level, pulling back. So let's be fair with the bears also. We actually do have a 3-day bearish pattern, which is evening star reversal. But for this evening star to reversal to happen, I think this evening star could really happen if bears can gap it down to maybe 328, 329, 328 level, and make that into an island top. Then perhaps the price will come all the way down and fill this gap, the second gap, before bouncing back up. So if you're expecting this market to pull back, then you're short term, what you want to look for is a gap down. So on that gap down, we'll confirm this evening star reversal here, right? 3-day pattern. We got a little doji, right? Bullish candle, bearish candle, and then gap down to confirm that. And in that process of gapping down, that evening star is gonna be combined with island top. So that's gonna have that much potency. That definitely, if we do see that, it's probably gonna come down and fill this gap, right? But the gap, when the gap gets filled, it's gonna act as pretty strong support. And we've talked about this before. And that's gonna bring back up to challenge that if we're to see a gap down next week. But if we start to fizzle here, like maybe come down a little bit and then retest the gap area, there's a good chance it's going to act as support. Maybe even fill this gap. Filling the gap is not enough, because filling the gap will just going to provide a short-term support before going higher. And if you're really, really worried about the short-term thing of short-term perspective, you can do a little Fibonacci here. You can see the first level of a fib is also coinciding with the filling this gap. So filling the gap is going to provide support before the bounce. What the bears needs to do, especially for the fact that we have so many gaps here. They need to bring it down, gap it down on Monday or Tuesday, make that into an island top. Then I think then it's gonna come down and fill this gap here. And at the same time, when we see that happening, there's a good chance of retesting this level. So I mean, you know, there's many times where I think this is gonna be an important pivot though going forward. You know, set up something like this. I wouldn't be surprised that this level gets retested one more time. Like just looking at this behavior, I won't be surprised to see something like that. And that will be bullish. So if we come down, retest the gap, I mean, that will be a good level to buy that dip, possibly for 340 and 350 going into the summer here. But I think marketing will start to slow down around March. So if we don't see something like that, if we don't see this thing gapping down, there's a good chance we could have another rally throughout this month. And then starting March through maybe, you know, July, September, we might see some grinding move. If we're to find support here and this continues throughout the February, then I think around March or so, we're gonna see some up and down, you know, throughout July, August, September before running higher. So we'll follow up next week, right? We'll follow up next week, and I'll tweet things out at 2K Kim like I always do. You can follow me there on Twitter. And if I see anything, if I see an island top, I'll tweet that out and see how it deals with the support level. And that's the level that we want to pay attention to going forward. But again, these three gaps are going to provide support. If bears just come down, fill the gap, it's going to bounce right back up. They must gap it down to make it into the island gap, right? For them to more pressure. Similar setup here. Let's do this. We got that gap here. We got another gap here. Let's just make the one. They got three gaps here also, right? Gap here, gap here, gap here, and we also got this down gap open, right? So we do have a 3-day pattern, evening star pattern here. Again, for that to be confirmed, they need to gap it down. Similar sentiment, similar logic applies there. Qs is so strong, doesn't even look like evening star. It looks more like a bull flagging pattern here, right? That potential. But you don't want to trade off of this. Remember, I always tell you that the short-term flagging, you don't want, because it could go either way. It's 50-50 coin toss. But looks more bullish here in this sector. That gap is open, and I think it's gonna provide. We're way far away from that 50 MA. Remember how that spider retested that, but we didn't even hit that yet. I wonder. That doesn't even work either. I wonder if I do it like, ooh, maybe that. Let me see. We have to use this one to this pivot. Oh yeah, looks like that's the pivot for Qs. Much steeper angle here, right? Versus the S&P, but here's resistance, kind of in this vicinity. We got the support there. So let's kind of watch out for that rising pivot. I think if we tend to come down, we may retest that, maybe coinciding with this gap area, fill it, go right back up. Should the price slide next week, right? Let's go to Russell 2000. Market is closing in about 20 seconds here, so rapid flashing lights here. NASDAQ found some support there. Trying to get rid of that one. There you go. But we have this pivot, I think. It's not perfect, but I think it's gonna fit. I think it's gonna fit if I do line chart. Yeah, perfect, right? Look at that. So once I did a line chart, it hits perfectly. Yeah, look at that. It hits. Wow, it looks just perfectly hitting there on a line chart. So definitely that's the pivot, right? So that's the level to watch. Should the price slide next week or so, you know, there's a gap here, there's a gap here. I mean, bears needs to go through two gaps just to come back down to retest this pivot. I personally think we're not going to break below that pivot. You know, all the pivots that I've drawn for you guys today's video, I got this pivot, rising pivot there. We got this diamond rising pivot here. You know what? I didn't draw you a pivot. I mean, that's old pivot. So on the diamond, it's not connecting perfectly, but let's diamond, you know, diamond tends to like not gonna respect the technicals perfectly. Spider happened to work out, but I guess we'll just have to call this as a trap. But so let's put that, you know what, but I want to kind of, let's put it there for now. So there's that pivot, we got this pivot on the Qs, and then I gave you this pivot on the Russell 2000. I personally don't think we're not going to break below that this month. I think we're going to hold it. If we come retest that, I think it's going to act as strong support. On the transport though, it's a little bit hectic here. What pivot do we have? We don't have any pivot on transport. We got no pivot. It looked like it was gonna break out, but it pulled back. Just kind of up and down move here. I still think transport is gonna break out. And it's been just grinding like this. We're gonna see a big breakout on transport, and also at the on the Russell 2000. And I've been saying this for weeks now, right? Transport, Russell 2000 lagging heavily. They've been very lethargic. They're gonna go. Money's gonna rotate from these large cap stocks, large tech stocks. It's gonna rotate back into these value investors. Are gonna come down and start betting into transports and small caps. And as these guys play catch up, I think that's what's going to continue to prop up this market. So I think transportation and the Russell 2000, I think they're going to start to make a move, possibly pretty soon here. And the banks, we have this pivot, and that's pretty good pivot. That's same logic, right? So we may come down, retest it. There are many gaps though. So bears has to go through all these gaps to come back down, retest. But if we do that will be like the worst case scenario, I think, in the next week or two. The worst case scenario, bearish case scenario this week, the next coming week would be then S&P, Diamond, Qs, Russell, and XLF to just come down, fill these gaps. And then retest. That would be the worst case scenario, next 1 or 2 weeks. But if they don't gap it down, they start fizzling here and they start coming down and then like filling the gap, the first side of gap, the first gap here, then we're gonna bounce back up. And then overall, I'm leaning towards seeing a run in February and then start slowing down in March throughout the summer. Market will still grind up and down, but slowing down. Because we had a phenomenal run since October lows, right? Let's see if I can find a pivot on semis here. I think it's here to, yep, that doesn't connect very well. So it connects well. I believe it connects on. I believe it connects on the triple shares. Because I look at triple shares because I'm long on triple. You see, there you go. Because I'm long on triple. I've been long on triple shares since here, and I've been buying the dips pretty aggressively. And I also bought this dip on October 31st. So you see how it connected pretty well here. But semi, it doesn't connect perfectly. So basically, what I did on this SOXL was like this. It was like that. It connected better on SOXL. But we'll leave it there. Wait, hold on a second. Let me see if I can. No, we'll just leave it there for now. It's not perfect, but that's gonna be the pivot. And we'll put the gap here, right? So yeah, I gave you all that rising pivot on all the indices today. Spider, Diamond, Qs, IWM, IYT, XLF, semiconductor. Worst case scenario, the worst case scenario for going into the next 1 to 2 weeks would be coming down, like shenanigan happens, right? We see a big gap down on Monday, we see a flush, and like, you know what I mean? Then retesting this pivot, and then we're probably gonna see a strong support pair going back up. We don't see any kind of aggression from the sellers. We kind of start fizzling here, little gappy down, gappy up, sideways, and then kind of like retest that level, maybe fill that gap. We're gonna continue to go back up, maybe having another run this month for 340. And that's kind of my forecast there. So, well, you guys have a wonderful weekend, and good luck trading next week.